Hi, this is Brendan Davis from Bedrock Blog and Bedrock Games, and I'm here with Adam Balderstone, and we are talking about Babylon 5, Season 5, the final 3 episodes. So this is Objects in Motion and Objects at Rest, which is like that's like the actual end, and then the sort of epilogue episode, Sleeping in Light. So, Adam, why don't you walk us into this? What's
Yeah,
Objects in Motion about?
objects in motion. This is a episode where uh, number one shows up from Mars and reveals there's a plot to assassinate Garibaldi and Lise, and so based on coming from the corporation that they're running now. We've also got Jakar plot. One of Jakar's obsessive fans is planning to kill him because he's not pure enough. And Jakar and Lita are getting ready to leave forever and go off into wherever, go off and have their own spin-off series that we never actually see.
And go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was saying that's have to ask you. So, what did you think of this one?
I mean, I like this episode. Number one, I enjoyed seeing number one again.
Yeah.
And it was her voice that I was like, that voice is familiar, and it was I thought that was good. She also, something about, she's like not a resistance leader, so something about her costuming, it took me a second. I was like, wait, is that another actress just trying to act like number one? It kind of took
Nope.
me a moment. But then I realized, oh, they just did her hair different or something, and so I thought I thought that was a nice touch. I think it was I don't know if it was this episode or the next episode where she and Franklin have dinner and stuff, but
It's this episode, I think, where she has the dinner, I believe.
okay, but it wasn't exactly it doesn't exactly sort of act as closure for the Franklin storyline, but I don't know, I just thought it was a nice.
Well, it's funny. I didn't remember she came back at all during the previous episode. We talked about her. We talked about her and Franklin and blah 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 and all of that. And so it was really funny her popping up again. I'm like, oh wow, she does come back, and there is a kind of a thing with Franklin. But it's like we say, Franklin is in a position where he absolutely needs somebody in his life. Was something we were talking about, the other day, and I was like, this episode like verified everything we
Yeah.
said in the previous podcast.
And yeah, and I did like, yeah, that was funny. I liked the sort of dueling assassination plot.
Yeah,
I had quibbles, so I felt that I would have preferred that the guy who tried to assassinate Jakar was doing it because he disagreed with Jakar rather than he was an uber fan of Jakar. That the
yeah,
only reason why it felt odd to me was it was a little too Hollywood, like a little too sort of, I don't know, like it felt like, not Hollywood, that's the wrong word. It felt very much part of our time, like this, I like just the sort of, the celebrity assassin. Um, like I know that it's totally plausible that there would be a celebrity assassin in the future. I kind of thought it would be more satisfying for me if it was like a guy who really disagreed with Shakar and and wasn't somebody he just kind of like, who was so excited about Shakar, and he just got really mad because Shakar wasn't giving him the time of day. It was
yeah.
maybe if
I don't know. It's tricky because I mean, ultimately, it's the celebrity status that's making Jakar leave. So it's like this is kind of, by having him be a celebrity fan type is kind of, it fits into that
yeah.
narrative of I just can't be around these people
Well,
anymore.
you know what I think it
Uh,
was? So when you have like that obsessive kind of character, you almost need like a character study leading into it. Do you know what I mean? Like you need like a taxi
yeah,
driver type storyline, and this guy just kind of arrived, and there, if I think if I had had a couple of episodes of him sort of like worshiping Jakar in his room, like just
yeah. He should have been part of those scenes that they did where you did have Jakar sitting around with his followers. That would have been
yeah,
better.
yeah, then it would have been like, oh, it's that guy, like that, then it would have had more impact. But because it was so out of just sort of like they needed it for this episode. And maybe
You kind
maybe
of knew where it
maybe
was
he showed
going.
up earlier and I didn't see him, but
No, I don't think so. But yeah, I remember the first scene you see him in this episode, you're like, oh, it's the crazy fan. He's
yeah,
going to do something terrible now.
yeah,
And
yeah,
yeah,
because
which is not the most satisfying way to
and
handle it.
and it was a fine episode. I'm not like attacking it. I just think it would
Hmm.
have been it would have been more enjoyable if he had been if we had seen that guy go from being like a what seemed like a regular fan to being an upset. You know what I mean? Like see it intensify over time. But again, it wasn't a really big part. It was like an additional assassin to complicate things. So I'm probably being overly critical.
I mean, mostly this episode is about saying goodbye to Lita, Jakar, Garibaldi, and Lise. It's kind of the Jakar, and Jakar, of course. But
I have to say it really is kind of like a winding down. It's not. It's a totally different approach than I was expecting. But yeah, I liked that. I liked that story. I felt. So here's what I kind of liked about the Garibaldi thing. They don't really resolve his alcoholism thing. They don't, like, you assume that that's probably going to get taken care of, but the job that he's going to, he could probably be an alcoholic and be just fine. The issue is with him on Babylon 5, it's such a high stakes job that, a slipping up for one day could ruin everything. The position he has on Mars, I could sort of see him surrounding himself by competent people, and if he has personal issues, it won't necessarily get in the way of him running that company. So,
and he's the owner of the company too, so you can always you put a good CEO in, you put in a good board of directors, which is something we see later, and that's like you could be a little more hands off in that job.
So it felt like a plausible landing for him, like that. It was like, okay, he's not going to jump back into the role that he had. This makes a lot of sense, and also there's not you don't. I mean, we in the final episode, it seems like he's things work out for him and Lise, but maybe not, because all we know is that he has a daughter. We don't know that that they're still together, right? So
we do. They mention her. She's just out. Franklin asks, okay. Where's Lise? And
all right, I missed that. So
they just couldn't get her on hand, I guess, for that episode.
I thought number one becoming the head of the intelligence for the Interstellar Alliance was a good move.
I like that a lot. Yeah, in the following episode too, it's like where you actually see her in the job for one scene. It's like, that was perfect. Perfect.
In fact, I'm going to say I think she's going to make a better head than Garibaldi did.
No question in my mind. No question at all.
And so I don't know. Any other thoughts on this episode? It was pretty simple story, really.
Yeah. I mean, it's a well done one. It's a good nice goodbye to Jakar, and Jakar gets his nice little speech that he gives to Sheridan there, and about the part of him that's leaving and the part that's staying. That's a nice moment. But yeah, I'm ready to move on to the next episode.
And I did like Zach's moment with the I forget what you call it, but the patch that everybody has on their hands, like the metallic. Link. I think it's a comm link. Is that what it is that bonds with?
Yeah.
I like that he sort of broke the case because the guy was using like a magnetic link as a replacement, and it was sticking to the. Or no, it wasn't magnetic. It was glue.
It was adhesive.
Yeah, it was adhesive, and they don't use adhesive. So I thought that was a pretty clever moment. So the next one is Objects at Rest. So why don't you bring us in on that one?
Yeah, well, this is the one where Sheridan and Delenn leave Babylon 5, and Franklin for that matter too. And it's also the one where Lanier makes his big betrayal moment, which is always a controversial moment in the show. So what did you think of that?
Well, I want to ask you, what do you think of that? I want to know what your opinion is first. Normally we do it the other way, but I'm interested.
Yeah, I didn't remember this part of the show very well, so I couldn't remember. I had a vague idea of what was going to happen, but I mean, it being, I'm glad at least it was something where Lanier made this momentary bad choice and then turned around. That makes it bearable. If it had just been Lanier doing it, I would have been completely unacceptable. I just would have, but yeah, seeing it again and being like, okay, well, he does turn around. I mean, it's still it's still a very odd thing for Lanier to do. But I don't know. Honestly, I'm a little undecided on how I feel about the whole thing.
So I feel like number one, I feel it was an odd moment because it was really on impulse, and it was
Yeah,
and it kind of came out of nowhere. There was just sort of like a leak on the ship, like it was very sort of out of the blue. I feel though that they'd been laying the groundwork for it for quite some time.
yeah,
So
yeah,
I don't feel that it's like I feel like it's not out of character at this point. It's definitely out of character for Lanier from the very beginning. Like he wouldn't have done this 3 seasons ago, but he's gone down a dark path. And like I think one thing that like he's changed as a character due to the is it the on the shock training? Is that the name of the?
yeah,
That's clearly had an impact on him, and I think that you can't. I mean, that's like it's like the equivalent of like somebody going to boot camp or going to becoming like going to like becoming a boxer and train. You know what I mean? Like it's like that kind of transformative process, and so I don't think you change a person through that kind of process without making them capable of things that they weren't capable of before. Do you know what I mean?
yeah.
And so
Makes sense.
so I bought it because I could see you can sort of see just in his face like there's a cloud that wasn't there before, and I think it's largely a product of the training he's been through.
Hmm.
Um, and so it's one of these things. It's sort of like okay, and just to use like a really sort of well-known example, the cave example where Luke Skywalker goes in and Yoda says you only sort of bring in what you take with you. I think it's that kind of thing. That's what sort of the Anlashok sort of training is. That's what any of that kind of transformative training is. And
Yeah,
so I think that's sort of the darkness that he was bringing with him. And he it only just beat him. Like he, if he was if it wasn't something where it was like an impulsive thing that just happened in the moment, he would have kept it under control. But because it was an impulsive thing, that this opportunity presented himself, and like his he was just operating purely on impulse, and like, ooh, my chance to get Delenn. It was but he immediately regretted the decision. Like he walked away, and like 10 feet later, he regrets this decision. But he
yeah.
can't undo the. I mean, there's no
No,
undoing
you
that.
can't walk
So
back. You
I
can't walk back.
so I kind of like that part of it because that's one of those things where like I think everybody's had a moment in their life where they've done something and there's just no taking it back, and it's never
Yeah.
it's well hopefully it's never that level, but like it's something that everybody can probably appreciate to a different degree, even if it's just sort of blowing up at somebody at the wrong time or something. But
Yeah. When I tried to remember this episode, like midway through the season, I actually got this a bit mixed up with the episode where Delenn's going back to Minbar and all the other religious caste people decide they're going to poison everyone on the ship. So these two episodes like conflated in my mind. So I kind of had this false memory of like Lanier having done something more deliberate. So I was very pleased when I got to this episode. I'm like, oh, okay, there was just this accident, and he tried to take advantage of it for a moment. He
yeah,
didn't actually like try and poison.
yeah, he didn't
Sheridan.
cause it.
So,
It was a regular. It wasn't like he planted the leak or anything like that. It was a leak that we've seen those kind of leaks happen on ships too. So it's not like
yeah,
it wasn't like It's like okay, yeah, that happens. They've established these kinds of accidents can occur. Um, but yeah, what confused me is this from this point on everything was just not at all what I was expecting in terms of where the show was going to go, and so I was expecting that the final episode was going to be remember all the visions that we had of him in Londo's court sort of being captured. I thought we were going to find out how all that happened and that the betrayal was going to occur during that mission. What I assumed was either Sheridan ends up imprisoned because of Lanier's betrayal, or he ends up not getting rescued in the end, or where he needs to be in the when he and Delenn are leaving, because Lanier betrays them or betrays him or something. So I thought his betrayal was gonna have much more catastrophic results, and it turned out to be fairly like in the grand scheme of things. The consequences for Sheridan are fairly minor, except for the fact that there's this rift now between him and Lanier. Like the consequences for Lanier Delenn and Sheridan are huge on a personal level, but Sheridan's not going to die because of it or anything. So
No, no, and it's yeah, it is I mean, as far as what happens with Londo and what happens with Sheridan ultimately and all that kind of thing, there it's all just kind of implied. You kind of piece the story together. It's like if you go back and watch the prequel again, which is, even though it's a prequel, it's really set on the night that Londo dies, and then you can with him telling the story, you can go back and watch that. You can go back and watch if you watch the second half of War Without End, where it's the one where Sheridan jumps forward. If you go back and rewatch those, you'll be like, oh, okay, you can kind of piece things together. And of course, the thing with their son, you're like, after watching Sleeping in Light, you know what the thing with their son is, So there's you can piece together a lot of it, but you never actually, the show never tells you concretely the story.
No, and I have to say that is in keeping with how the show does things. It's sort of the uh, Reservoir Dogs effect, where everybody always remembers the jewel heist that you never actually see. And so
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of that in this show, where there's things that you think you remember, but you never actually saw them. They were just talked about. And so by the time we got to see the Psi Corps headquarters, I felt like I had already seen it, even though I don't think I had. And
Yeah.
so I think that was the case here. But I just was so convinced that was going to be the final episode. So I thought I didn't realize they were going to take this winding down approach that they took.
Yeah, that was why we discussed whether to do the finale as its own episode. I'm like, no, it's of a piece with, these 3 episodes are a trilogy. This is just the winding down trilogy here. So I thought doing them as one podcast was the way to go.
And I did like the boardroom scene. I thought that was very in keeping with Garibaldi, and that
Yeah.
I like the guy with the cigar. I mean, it was a little over the top, but it worked. The guy with the cigar, who he starts out in total control of things at the start of the scene, and then by the end, he's in. Garibaldi has him in the palm of his hand, and I just thought it was a nice sort of way to have Garibaldi's story end. I mean, and we get more of it in the next episode, but this is really where things kind of resolve with him.
Yeah, so it's just a way of letting Garibaldi get his power back after having been a screw up for most of the season. It's like, all right, he gets to do one last cool Garibaldi move before he goes off into the sunset.
Now, what did you think about the urn scene? Because that was a very confusing scene on a lot of levels, I thought. Not because it was a bad scene, just because there's a lot to sort of process. There's a lot of stuff going on. Londo is obviously very conflicted, but he's basically, so what it seems like is going on is he's giving a keeper to Sheridan's son to basically, he gives him an urn and says to give it to his son on his 16th birthday, and it's got one of those things that's on Londo's shoulder, and Sheridan and Delenn have no idea. I would think they would be very skeptical of what's inside. Like, I would have that thing scanned, but then I'm a viewer, so I'm naturally suspicious. But also Londo seems genuinely like he's trying. He asked for some wine during the thing, and I think he was going to, his plan going in, I think, was
to put the keeper to sleep.
Yeah, and then warn them.
And it's a really plausible setup too. Why there's no alcohol? It's like they've set up all the way back in season 1 that alcohol. It was almost kind of like a one-off joke in that scene with the episode with Londo and Lanier, but ultimately it's the thing that creates this huge tragedy down at the end, down at the final episode.
And it's the ultimate dry town, but and it makes total sense. They wouldn't have given if there's a substance that throws your people into psychotic rages, you're not going to have that substance on your planet.
No, if you're like the Minbari, the orderly Minbari, you're definitely not going to have it around.
But then Londo just kind of drops it. He doesn't pursue it, and I think because he doesn't want to attract the suspicion of the keeper. But it can lead you to think, oh, he just doesn't care. But then he makes that point where he's like, I just want you to know how much this means to me. I forget what he said, but he basically was like, this is like, I really am cherishing this moment, no matter what happens. So So I thought it was a good scene because it wasn't satisfying. Like
Yeah, I
satisfying
know.
result.
I know. You're like, what? Give him a drink. Give him a drink. We want to have this happy scene of them working together one more time. And uh,
And
yeah, he's on the emotional. Londo is emotionally able to tell them how he feels about them, and he really does care about them, but he can't do anything about it.
and and we've only had and the thing is, I like that they don't spell things out for you. That they assume you're smart enough to remember that Londo had mentioned in the flash forward scene about the drinking and the keeper, and that there was a
Yeah,
vague allusion to it with the region, and that was about it. And then at the
yeah,
end of the scene, the only reminder you get is they give him a glass of wine, but you don't necessarily know. Like if you haven't been paying attention, you don't necessarily they don't explain what the wine does. They just say you've been good. You can you can have a reward, and so you just might think, oh, they're just giving him like really good wine as a like and so yeah. So I thought it was I thought it was a really I don't know, it was a really effective moment in the show, and it was pretty sad too in a lot of ways.
yeah. That was a tough scene. And yeah, and I'd forgotten about that scene, to be honest. That completely slipped my mind. I didn't remember that we got one more Londo scene there, so that was enjoyable having him pop up.
Oh yeah, because you had mentioned this might have been our last Londo scene. So yeah, I was
Yeah,
surprised because I was saying, okay, maybe it was our last Londo, um,
yeah.
and
Uh,
so this brings us to Sleeping in Light.
Sleeping in Light, yeah, yeah. Which yes, we get the final. It's the reunion episode before the show actually ends. But
But it's only a
yeah,
partial reunion. It's only a partial reunion.
yeah. Well, as the toast scene makes very heavily clear, not everyone is still around. And yeah, I mean it's interesting because the events you thought were going to be the final episode, they've already happened, and they're alluded to slightly, but it's like all that's been resolved. It's like Veer's the emperor now, and Londo's gone, Jakar's gone.
Now, one thing I'm a little confused about, and I don't know if this is ever explained, but why do Jakar and Londo fight? What is the purpose of that?
I think it's because I think Londo spent all this time setting up whatever his plan in motion to get rid of the Drock, and
Okay.
he's the last. He with his keeper is basically the last element of power that the Drock have, and so Jakar killing him isn't them being enemies. Jakar coming in and killing him, and Londo killing Jakar in return. That's Jakar making his final sacrifice for their friendship, going, okay, you've done it. You can die now. And that's
Okay.
it. Now then Veer can step in and clean up the mess. So
Okay.
yeah, it's a mercy killing basically.
Okay. Yeah.
That's my reading. I mean,
No, that seems right. I just was a little bit unclear. I wanted to kind of go
it's
back and check it again. In fact, because I was
yeah. Oh, check it again. It's a lot more when you watch it with that intent. You can totally see it.
okay. Yeah, I think I'm going to. But yeah. So I'm sorry. I think I interrupted you. You were.
No, that was a good digression there. But yeah, the toast scene in that is a good scene where they're having the dinner and just talking about old stories, and Veer giving his little talk about Londo at the dinner, and how even after all he did, he still misses him. That's one of my favorite Veer moments in the show.
So, and it ends with him going to Babylon 5 to die,
Mhm.
basically. And Babylon 5 is being shut down. It's kind of like, I feel like they used to do this in shows, but maybe I'm just remembering, maybe I'm projecting, but I feel like a lot of shows ended with people turning off the lights.
Yeah,
am I
you see, he
correct?
was it was turning off, literally the guy flipping the switch to turn the lights in that episode.
What was that?
Did you see who the guy who was literally the one flipping off the lights?
Was it one of the Mac and Bo guys? Because that's,
It was Straczynski. It
oh,
was
was Straczynski?
him
Okay.
making a cameo to turn the lights off on
Okay, I didn't
Babylon
even know.
5.
Yeah, I didn't. I should have probably been paying attention to the guy that was actually shutting the lights off. But
Yeah, yeah. So that was definitely
though,
on the nose
though
there.
to be honest, I probably wouldn't recognize him because I've only seen interviews of him. He's only really been on my radar as a person since we started doing this, and
Sure.
and so I've seen recent interviews of him, but I haven't seen interviews from him from that period. So
Okay. Okay.
so I'm assuming he probably looked different in the '90s. Though maybe I don't know. I'll go back and check and see.
But yeah, I don't know. I enjoy this episode. I mean, it is just winding down, kind of a wrap up, but I find it pretty satisfying. Yeah, another one with the dinner scene I like too. I like the part where when they're kind of naming off all the people that they're toasting. You know, I like the touch of having Franklin starting to say Marcus's name and Ivanova jumping in on it because it's given their connection they both had to him, and Franklin's little kind of nod to her afterwards, but yeah, I don't know. I found this it's just kind of a satisfying way to wrap up the show because, like, as you said, the show's gone so epic at times. Going for a big finish, I don't think would have worked. It's
Yeah, I would agree with you. Initially, when it first happened, I was annoyed because I was expecting it to go to that place that I thought it was going to go. But then as I thought about it, I was like, well, I've already got all of the basic components of that, so it would really be kind of more of a fan service to end it with that episode. And maybe it's better to sort of, have all these pieces that you kind of are putting together rather than, seeing the entire, like, there's just a few little, there's really thin gaps in the story. There's not that much that you have to fill in yourself. And so I think if they had ended it with that mission and everything, you could end up with like a prequel type situation. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like a little bit too much information. So I think it was good to go this way. I don't know how I feel about him leaving Delenn behind though to go on his death walk to Babylon 5.
I agree. I felt kind of bad about that. I was like, oh.
I mean, maybe that's like I don't know. I guess it depends on how, like that. I just know that's not how that would go down in my family. Like that's not how.
Yeah, I know.
There's,
they keep cutting to the lad alone in the bed too, just to make you even more thinking, man, he should be there.
But yeah, I don't know. It's just a very cowboy way to kind of. Sort of like that. I guess he doesn't want people to see him die. Is that sort of the?
Well, the ending's ambiguous from a standpoint too, because at the end it's like, does he just die, or does Lorien actually come back and take him to the rim or something? It's a very ambiguous ending. It's like, is he truly dead, or does he get does he ascend up to heaven basically at the end? It's yeah.
Yeah, I wasn't
don't know.
expecting Lorien in that. That surprised me that they, I mean, again, it was a vision. It wasn't clear what was going on. He could have just been dying, but I am inclined to think that maybe he is at the rim. I don't know. I think to me that's a slightly more sasatisfying ending than he just dies. But
yeah, it's definitely the ending I would like. But it doesn't make it concrete completely.
But yeah, I don't know. And but no, I just felt bad for Delenn, sort of, not being able to have, like, it feels like there's not that's not really a good way to give her a closure on his death. But she's Minbari, so maybe she'll understand. They're a little bit more. I think she's a little bit more down with that sort of thing. So.
I mean, it's.
But also, I don't know, because Minbari, they have extensive rituals for everything, and so I would think that they would probably be more inclined to have something where, like, the body is, like, laid for, a period of time, and I would imagine that if they treat, like, dinner as like it has all these rites involved with it, and so how could death not have?
Well, they did bring that up, though, because remember the going to the sea thing. It's like Sheridan, they talk about it when they're in bed at one point during that episode where he says he thinks going off would fit well with the Minbari concept of going to the sea.
But wasn't going to the sea when somebody, like, gets, like, a compulsion to go and wander? And
like I said, he literally, it's like, I mean, it's not basically Sheridan just leaves. He just goes to the sea,
That's
and it's
no, I got
ambiguous.
that, but okay, so maybe I don't understand what going to the sea is, but my sense was that's the thing where somebody you when you do the going to the sea thing, you do that knowing you have several years to sort of go and do this thing, and not every Minbari would do that. I'm assuming it's
I no, I got the assumption with going to sea. There's something you do at the end of your life where you just leave. It's you're going off to do things, at the end of your life, kind of thing.
but that's what I'm saying. But you still assume there's some time for you to do those things. Do you know what I mean?
Oh yeah, he's talking about, but Sheridan's talking about the perception, because like no one. It's not like it's public knowledge that he's
Oh
dying.
no, I get that, but what I'm saying, but that was pure. Okay, but the thing about that bothered me is that was a purely strategic thing in order to ensure his memory left the
Yeah,
impression that he wanted it to. But I'm
yeah,
talking about the ritual aspect of dying and the ritual,
you're
like Glenn getting the
yeah,
closure she needs because her husband is dead, and so
you're
that
talking about it purely from
yeah,
Delen's
like
perspective.
from a
Okay.
political perspective, yeah, what he did was like that's a great sort of PR move, but like I feel like it's not. I don't know. It feel like it feels like a really cold way. It further dehumanizes his character because it turns him into a public figure more than a personal figure for Delenn. Do you know what I mean? And
Yeah,
so
yeah.
what I want to see is I want to see when you have a big character like this a return to the personal at the end rather than no, I'm gonna keep going, I'm gonna run with this even more, and she's gonna lose even more of him. So
Yeah. Oh, it casts some of the stuff at the previous season ender in a new light too, because there is kind of the accusation by the pundits in that talk, on the show that they have in the future, 100 years in the future or whatever, where they're accusing, oh yeah, well Sheridan disappeared, but that was just a PR move to, make it look like he ascended. And it's like, and then we get this scene in this episode of Sheridan going, it would be a shrewd political move if I. So it's which I like. I actually like that they added a layer of complexity to that.
no,
You.
it's not bad. I don't want to say that I'm complaining about the show. What I'm complaining about is
Oh, I
the
don't think you
yeah,
are.
yeah, no,
No.
this is me as a viewer saying I want there to be like I am, it's making me feel something, and that's all I really ask of shows and movies is that they make me feel something. And so the show, this finale made me feel things, and that's important, and so that was good. I just was very resistant to him going, like, the whole time he's on Babylon 5, I'm thinking you should be back on Mimbar with Delenn.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
and so I just couldn't accept the closure the show was trying to bring me to. It
Yeah.
was, again, I don't think that's bad. I think like I didn't to use another famous example, like the Seinfeld finale. I loved the Seinfeld finale, even though I didn't want them to go to jail. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's that kind of a thing. Though this I don't think is this isn't as in contrast to what the viewers want. I think a lot of viewers would have been fully on board with him going to Babylon 5. It wasn't
I could give my review of the Seinfeld finale, definitely, but I think that would be way off topic.
Yeah.
So I'll talk to you after the show.
Yeah,
on
that's a
that.
good idea. That's a good idea.
But yeah, another thing we didn't talk about in a previous episode though. I like Talon becoming the new Narn ambassador. Jakar appointing him. That was a nice moment from a previous episode we
Yeah,
didn't get to.
I like that. He was a good fit, and I don't know, something about anytime we have any Narn stuff, I really want to go and watch Alien Nation again, both the series and the movie, and I also I don't know, I just can't get those the dot. I think it's the dots on the head that are really sort of bringing that, but for some reason with that character in particular, I really notice it.
Yeah, but yeah, it's so that I don't know. I know what you're saying, and I mean it's interesting that this show there are interesting things in this finale. Like, for example, there's absolutely no intention to carry on Babylon 5 as a series, but they go to a lot of trouble to kind of set up. Here's the new cast kind of thing, which there's never any plan, but you get the whole new Babylon 5 kind of lineup and everything, even though, as if they were going to continue it, but they aren't. So there are kind of strange elements to it as far as wrapping up the show. It works very hard to show you that nothing actually is coming to an end.
Yeah, that's well, except Babylon 5, the station is
Well,
being
yeah,
turned off.
yeah, yeah. I'm thinking. I'm kind of jumping back an episode. I'm thinking to the episode, the previous one, when we're ending the time frame the series talks in. Yeah, not the actual 20 years later framework.
But even there, the Alliance is still a thing. So it's just Babylon. It's just not based of. And also, it would be kind of a bad idea to continue. Babylon 5 is kind of a sitting duck in a lot of ways. And so
Yeah,
you probably don't want the Alliance there. You probably want them on a home planet somewhere.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And but yeah, Ivanova. We haven't talked about Ivanova yet, and I think it's interesting that the final episode was filmed at the end of the previous season, but I think it fits really well with the way the show went with her ending up leaving because kind of the position we see her in this episode is she's gone back to Earth and she's just kind of isolated and she doesn't feel connected to anything, and it's kind of her getting the ranger job is her being brought back into the fold after having been left. It's her returning, and I think it almost works. I mean, obviously we don't know what would have happened if she'd stayed on the show, but it works really well with what we did see.
No, it did. And the other thing I was thinking about it, because the epilogue is 20 years later, they could get away with doing more stuff with that character and Delenn, given where they left things. Do you know what I mean? Like, if they wanted to, they probably won't, but if they wanted to do, like, if he got suddenly inspired to do like a string of episodes, they could do that. And now would actually be a pretty appropriate time. I mean, it's a little bit longer than 20 years, right? Is it or when did this episode air?
It's just about 20 years. Let's see, this aired in 1998. So yeah, we are 20 years ago. Yeah.
But yeah, no, I thought it worked. I thought it worked for the reasons that you said, and
yeah,
I was so yeah, so I don't know. I thought it was a nice episode. I was initially resistant, but I sort of warmed up to what they were doing, and I realized this is a good way to end the series. I thought I would have liked to see more Jakar in the finale. I think that was the thing that I was most sad about. But yeah, I thought it worked, and I thought the last 3 episodes again. I was really surprised where it went. I was not. For some reason, I thought they were going a totally different direction at the end of the season.
Yeah, that's the reason I kind of give the warning. I'm like, it's not. I mean, big things, huge things did happen as far as the Centauri War and all that stuff. It's not like nothing happens, but it's not. It's if you're expecting the finish to be a big thing. Because I was a little disappointed the first time I watched the show, and the second time I watched it, knowing that I really enjoyed these episodes, taking them for what they were.
So, but yeah, so I don't know. Any other thoughts?
As far as Jakar not being in the last episode, and you feel wishing there had been more. I kind of like that to an extent because it's like it really makes you miss Jakar more, him being gone from the last episode. It's I don't know. Like I said, I would have liked more of him, but
no,
I like
and given the timeline, they kind of had to. They didn't have any choice. Like they couldn't,
no.
It would have been a cheat to bring him in.
And Jakar pretty much got an episode mostly dedicated to him, saying goodbye to Jakar. So.
So yeah, I thought that worked, and I liked where things went with him and Lita, and I like that they left it a little bit unclear exactly how that is going to work out. You don't really, Now, do we know what happened to Lita? That was something that I wasn't 100% sure of.
Nope, we don't find out her ultimate fate. I don't know. Maybe it's in the Psychor novels, or maybe it's in the Centauri novels. But I don't know of ultimately what happens to her. It's kind of a mystery.
Okay, all right. So, yeah. So I mean, again, this was I'm really glad I watched the show. It's really kind of like it's a show that you're really sort of upset when it ends because there's no more.
I
Um,
know.
so I guess that just means I got to go back and rewatch, and I can. I'm sure there's a lot to be gained on watching it again. So,
There is.
but yeah, I thought this was wonderful. I would highly recommend this series to anybody that likes science fiction. I think it's I think it was a really well done show, and it got just the right blend of like good writing, but also enough fun stuff that I didn't like get bored with it. Do you know what I mean?
Mhm.
Like
Yeah.
sometimes they get so hung up on the good writing that they forget to make it fun. And so I liked that there was still fun elements throughout the show. And and so I think part of that is the product of the time it was made in. It was it was made before, you know, shows were so focused on being exceptional writing.
Serious.
And
Yeah.
and and so I think sometimes uh, I think sometimes the goal of this is going to be like well written is almost like can take you down paths that don't always lead to the most enjoyable stuff to watch or read. So
Yeah.
I think so I guess what I'm saying is it's not overly pretentious, even though it's really well written. And I think that there's still kind of like a you know you don't have you can just enjoy it because it's fun, and I think that's it's an entertaining show, but it's also a show where you feel like you said, there's a lot of stuff where you can say, this stuff lines up so well, like wow, that was really amazing. But you don't
Yeah.
have to notice that to enjoy the show. Like there's plenty of stuff between those two things that'll hold your interest and keep you entertained.
Yeah. And this is my third time watching the show from beginning to end, and it really is interesting how the themes in it and everything. Having watched it in three kind of separate historical little eras within my lifetime, it's like it's got different things that seem very significant every time I watch it. It always seems relevant, but in relevant different ways during different times I've watched it, which is impressive. That's not an easy thing to do.
And so, yeah, so we are having an approaching storm, so we are going to have to wrap it up here. But
Hmm.
yeah, I think this was great, and we are still going to continue with people may forget this is like part of a regular show me and Adam do, and we just happened to start watching Babylon 5, and so we're going to be back on with Return of Condor Heroes, the 2006 series, probably next week sometime. But before that, we're going to do a palate cleanse. And what's the movie? Outland? Is that the name of the movie?
Outland is the movie,
Yeah.
yes.
So it's a Sean Connery film. I don't know when we're going to do it, but it'll be sometime between now and next week. And we also have another edition of Game Lab coming up. So and on Friday we're doing Shadow It. So we have the Shadow It movie, and
Yeah.
and yeah. So just keep keep listening, and we'll talk to you later.